Sarah Mitchell had spent 12 years clawing her way from Chicago's South Side projects to become one of Atlanta's most successful corporate attorneys, making partner at 32 and commanding $850 an hour for her expertise in hostile takeover defenses. But on August 3rd, 2024, exactly 8 days after her extravagant $2 million wedding at the St. Regis Atlanta, she would stand at her blood-splattered Buckhead mansion, holding a kitchen knife that would send her to prison for the rest of her life, because the man she'd married in front of 300 guests and the woman she'd called her best friend since college were now dead on her marble floor. If you're intrigued by how ambition and betrayal can transform a brilliant legal mind into something unrecognizable, and how a woman who'd spent her career winning battles in boardrooms lost the most important fight of her life in her own home, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story will show you that sometimes the price of perfection is paid in blood. But let's go back to where Sarah's story really began. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell grew up in the I-to-B Wells Homes, a Chicago housing project where gunshots were the neighborhood lullaby and survival was the only lesson that mattered. Her father, Robert Mitchell, had been a promising engineer until crack cocaine rewrote his story. He disappeared when Sarah was 7, leaving behind a daughter who would spend the rest of her life proving she was nothing like him. Her mother, Gloria, cleaned offices at the Chicago Board of Trade, leaving at 4 a.m. and returning after dark. Her hands raw from industrial cleaners and her back bent from scrubbing floors where millionaires made decisions that would never benefit people like her. "Baby, you're going to be the one who makes it out," Gloria told Sarah every single morning, pressing a hand to her daughter's cheek. "You're too smart, too strong, too special to end up like me. Promise me you'll be great." Sarah built her entire existence around that promise. Valedictorian at Phillips Academy High School, full academic scholarship to Northwestern University, Harvard Law School on a combination of loans and sheer determination that bordered on obsession. She didn't just succeed, she annihilated every standard of excellence put in front of her. Every professor who doubted her, every classmate who whispered about affirmative action, every recruiter who asked if she was really from Chicago learned the same lesson. Sarah Mitchell didn't just compete. She dominated so thoroughly that competition ceased to exist. That's where she met Jasmine Brooks during their sophomore year at Northwestern. Jasmine came from everything Sarah didn't have. Old money from Savannah, a family tree that included judges and senators, finishing school poise, and the kind of effortless grace that comes from never questioning your place in the world. They should have been enemies. Instead, they became inseparable. Jasmine introduced Sarah to a world of country clubs and cotillions. Sarah showed Jasmine what ambition looked like when survival depended on it. Their friendship was built on mutual admiration and the unspoken understanding that they were both exceptional. After law school, Jasmine moved back to Atlanta to work in her family's boutique firm handling estate planning for Georgia's old money elite. Sarah followed, drawn by Atlanta's promise of black excellence and opportunities that Chicago's old guard firms would never offer her. She joined Morrison & Price, one of the city's most prestigious corporate law firms, as their first black female associate. The racism was subtle but constant, microaggressions wrapped in Southern politeness, assignments that tested her competence, clients who requested someone more senior, until her brilliance made denial impossible. She made partner in 6 years, a record that would have been 4 if she'd been white and male. Her specialty was hostile takeover defense, the legal equivalent of war, where millions of dollars and corporate empires hung on her ability to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast opponents. She was magnificent at it, cold, calculating, ruthless in ways that made opposing counsel dread seeing her name on court filings. That's when she met David Harrison at a charity gala in 2019. He was everything Northwestern sociology professors had warned her about, a private equity managing director from Morehouse money, Spelman pedigree, the kind of black excellence that had never known struggle. His family owned commercial real estate across the Southeast. His grandfather had been one of the first black men to integrate Atlanta's business elite in the 1960s. David Harrison had been raised to expect success, not fight for it. Their courtship was Atlanta society news. the self-made corporate attorney, and the private equity prince. They were featured in Atlanta Black Star, photographed at gallery openings, seated at tables during the mayor's mass ball. Sarah had spent her entire life proving she belonged. David made her feel like she'd finally arrived. The proposal came during a weekend in Martha's Vineyard at the Harrison family compound. David on one knee on a private beach with a 5-carat diamond that caught the sunset like captured fire. "You're the most extraordinary woman I've ever met," he told her. "Marry me, and let's build an empire together." Sarah said yes because she'd earned this. Because every sacrifice her mother made, every night she'd studied until her eyes burned, every time she'd been underestimated and had proven them wrong, it had all been leading to this moment. She was going to marry into Atlanta royalty and cement her place in a world that had tried to keep her out. The wedding on July 26, 2024, was designed to make a statement. The St. Regis Atlanta Ballroom transformed into something from a fairy tale. 300 guests, including Atlanta's mayor, entertainment industry moguls, and enough corporate power to move markets. Sarah wore a custom Nina Tornai gown that cost $47,000. Jasmine was her maid of honor, radiant in champagne silk, crying during the vows and whispering afterward, "You deserve every bit of this happiness. I'm so proud of you." The reception featured performances by Grammy-winning artists. The 7-tier cake was a work of art. The bar served $300 bottles of champagne, like water. The estimated cost was $2 million, split between Sarah's firm bonus and the Harrison family's casual wealth. It was perfection, documented by hired photographers, shared across social media, featured in Municipi Bride magazine as one of the year's most spectacular black weddings. But perfection, Sarah would learn, is just an expensive illusion that shatters louder than cheap glass. The honeymoon was 3 weeks in the Maldives, an overwater villa that cost $12,000 a night with views that belonged in screensavers. It should have been paradise. Instead, Sarah noticed things her legal mind couldn't ignore. David was constantly on his phone, claiming urgent deals that required his attention. She'd spent enough time reading body language in depositions to recognize evasion. The angled screens, the stepped-away calls, the shower sessions that lasted too long. "Is everything okay?" she asked on day 5, watching him type furiously during a candlelit dinner on their private deck. "Just closing a deal," he said, not meeting her eyes. "You know how it is when money's on the table." She knew. She knew the difference between work stress and guilt. She knew the micro-expressions that signal lies. She knew, but she chose to ignore it because accepting the truth would mean admitting she'd been wrong about the most important decision of her life, and Sarah Mitchell was never wrong. They returned to Atlanta on August 1st, moving into the Buckhead mansion David had purchased as a wedding gift. 8,000 square feet, 6 bedrooms, a wine cellar, and a view of the city skyline that cost $3.2 million. It was everything Sarah had dreamed of during those nights in the projects when police sirens were a lullaby. It felt like a museum of someone else's life. The discovery came on August 2nd in the way these things always happen. David was in his home office on a conference call. His personal phone was charging in their bedroom. A text preview lit up the screen that ended Sarah's world. "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I need you." The sender, Jasmine Brooks. Sarah's hands went cold. Not Jasmine. Not her best friend of 14 years. Not the woman who'd stood beside her at the altar 7 days ago, crying tears that Sarah now understood were guilt, not joy. Not the person she'd trusted with every secret, every insecurity, every dream since they were 19 years old. She accessed David's laptop. They shared passwords, a symbol of trust that now felt like weaponized stupidity. The email trail went back 11 months, starting shortly after Sarah and David's engagement announcement. Hotel reservations at the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons, places 20 minutes from where Sarah was working 80-hour weeks to make partner, while her fiancé was building a separate life with her best friend. The photographs made her physically ill. Jasmine and David in poses that suggested intimacy and comfort, familiarity that takes time to build. There are screenshots of their text conversations, inside jokes, pet names, Plans made while Sarah was in arbitration hearings fighting for clients who paid her $850 an hour for her brilliance. The most devastating message was dated July 20th, 6 days before the wedding. "I feel sick about this wedding," Jasmine had written. "Watching her be so happy when we're lying to her face. Maybe we should tell her the truth." David's response was clinical in its cruelty. "And destroy everything? Sarah's not going to understand. She'll make it a war, and nobody wins. Let's just get through the wedding. After things settle, we'll figure out our next move. Be patient." Jasmine's reply, "I love you. I'll wait as long as you need." Sarah read those words sitting on the edge of the bed she'd shared with David for exactly 7 nights as his wife. Her legal mind automatically began cataloging evidence, building a case, preparing for the litigation of her life. But underneath the professional training was something darker, something that had been forged in those Chicago projects where violence was a language everyone spoke fluently. She spent August 2nd in a dissociative state, moving through depositions and client meetings on autopilot while her mind constructed and deconstructed scenarios. She knew David had a standing Thursday evening basketball game with his Morehouse brothers. She knew Jasmine's Thursday routine: yoga at 6 p.m., home by 7:30, dinner alone because she was perpetually single, always complaining about Atlanta's dating scene while she was sleeping with Sarah's husband. Sarah called Jasmine that afternoon. "Can I come over tonight? I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course, honey," Jasmine said, her voice warm with false friendship. "Is everything okay?" "Just some stuff at the firm," Sarah lied smoothly. "I need advice from someone who gets it. Around 8, I'll have wine ready." "Love you, girl." "Love you too," Sarah said, and meant it in a way Jasmine would never understand. August 3rd, 2024. Sarah left work at 6 p.m., telling her assistant she wasn't feeling well. She drove home to the Buckhead mansion, showered, changed into comfortable clothes. She made herself dinner, ate mechanically, cleaned the kitchen with methodical precision. At 7:30 p.m., she went to the garage and selected a knife from David's expensive collection. An 8-inch Wusthof chef's knife, German steel, sharp enough to slice through bone. She didn't have a plan. That's what she would tell police later, and it was true in the way that all lies contain kernel of truth. She had an intention, which is different from a plan. She intended to confront them. What happened after that existed in a space beyond rational thought. Jasmine lived in a Virginia Highland bungalow, the kind of charming older home that Atlanta's creative class loved. Sarah had been there hundreds of times for wine nights, brunch, strategy sessions about men and careers and futures that no longer existed. She had a key. Jasmine had given it to her years ago. "Your family," she'd said. "You can always come home to me." Sarah let herself in at 7:58 p.m. The house smelled like the lavender candles Jasmine always burned. Music played softly from the living room. John Mayer, the same artist who'd performed at Sarah's wedding reception. The universe had a vicious sense of irony. Jasmine was in the kitchen, opening a bottle of Pinot Noir. She turned when she heard footsteps, her smile automatic and bright. "Hey, you're early." "I was just." She stopped when she saw Sarah's face. The smile died like a candle blown out. "Sarah?" Jasmine's voice was uncertain, fear creeping in around the edges. "What's wrong?" "You tell me," Sarah said quietly. "You tell me what's wrong, Jasmine. You tell me what could possibly be wrong." Understanding crashed over Jasmine's face like a wave. Her hand trembled, the wine bottle slipping slightly before she caught it. "Sarah, I can explain. 11 months, Sarah interrupted, her voice still eerily calm. "You've been sleeping with my husband for 11 months. Through my engagement, through wedding planning, through the ceremony where you stood next to me and cried. What exactly are you going to explain?" Jasmine set down the wine bottle. Her hand was shaking badly now. "I never meant for it to happen. You have to believe me. It evolved. We tried to stop." "Don't." Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare tell me it just happened like you tripped and fell on his dick repeatedly for almost a year. You chose this. Every single day, you chose to betray me." "I love him," Jasmine whispered, and those 3 words detonated something in Sarah that had been building since that text message destroyed her world. What happened next would be reconstructed from forensic evidence, blood spatter analysis, and Sarah's own confession. The medical examiner would later testify that the attack was frenzied, personal, the kind of violence that comes from rage, so profound it bypasses rational thought entirely. Sarah didn't remember crossing the kitchen. She remembered Jasmine's eyes going wide. She remembered the weight of the knife in her hand. She remembered the resistance of flesh and the warmth of blood and Jasmine's screams cutting off into wet, gasping sounds. When Sarah came back to herself, Jasmine was on the floor, the front of her white blouse blooming red like roses. Her eyes were still open, still aware, her mouth moving soundlessly. Sarah knelt beside her, this woman who'd been her sister in everything but blood. "You were supposed to be the one person who would never hurt me," Sarah whispered. "The one safe place in my whole life. And you took everything." Jasmine died at 8:17 p.m., according to the medical examiner's later testimony. Sarah sat with her body for 23 minutes, covered in blood, still holding the knife. Then she drove home. David was in the shower when she arrived, singing off-key to Drake, completely unaware that half of his secret had just bled out on a kitchen floor in Virginia Highland. Sarah stood in their bedroom doorway, still covered in Jasmine's blood, and waited. He came out wrapped in a towel, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and froze. "Sarah, what the fuck?" He saw the blood, the knife, the look on her face. "Oh my God, what did you do?" "I killed her," Sarah said conversationally. "I killed Jasmine because she was sleeping with you. Because my best friend and my husband decided I was disposable. Because apparently, I'm the only person in my own life who didn't get a vote on whether my marriage was real." David backed away, his phone falling from his hands. "Sarah, baby, listen to me. We can fix this. We can." "Fix what?" Sarah laughed, the sound brittle and wrong. "Fix that you've been fucking my best friend since October? Fix that my entire wedding was a lie? Fix that Jasmine's dead on her kitchen floor because I loved both of you more than I loved myself?" David ran. That's what the evidence would later show. He ran for the bedroom door, trying to reach the stairs, trying to get to his phone, trying to do anything but face what he'd created. Sarah caught him halfway across the room. The second murder was different from the first. Jasmine had been rage and betrayal and heartbreak turned physical. David was colder, more deliberate. Sarah would later describe it as watching herself from outside her body, seeing this woman who looked like her stab her husband 17 times while he begged for his life. The medical examiner would note that the wounds showed increasing precision, suggesting Sarah regained control partway through the attack. The initial strikes were frenzied, the later ones placed with surgical accuracy. David bled out on the bedroom carpet at 9:04 p.m. while Sarah sat beside him, still holding the knife, completely silent. She didn't call 911. That's what would distinguish her case from temporary insanity defenses. Instead, she took a shower, washing Jasmine's and David's blood down the drain with methodical care. She changed into clean clothes. She poured herself a glass of wine from the $400 bottle David had been saving for a special occasion. Then she called her law firm's senior partner. "Michael, it's Sarah. I need you to get me the best criminal defense attorney in Atlanta. I just killed my husband and my best friend, and I'm going to need representation." Michael Brennan thought she was having a breakdown, making some kind of dark joke after the stress of the wedding. He stopped laughing when police found 2 bodies and Sarah Mitchell sitting calmly in her Buckhead mansion, her hands covered in defensive wounds that would never be adequately explained, waiting to be arrested. Detective Raymond Cooper had worked Atlanta homicide for 23 years, but this case made him feel sick in ways that transcended professional detachment. 2 bodies in 2 locations. A suspect who was a brilliant attorney sitting calmly in her $1 million home, fully aware of her rights, completely cooperative and obviously guilty. "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent," Sarah told him when he arrived. "I will cooperate with all forensic procedures, but I'm requesting legal counsel immediately. You'll find Jasmine Brooks dead in her home at 847 Piedmont Avenue. The knife used in both homicides is in my kitchen sink. I'm aware of my Miranda rights, and I'm waiving my right to have them read to me because I taught criminal procedure at Emory Law School for 3 years. Even in complete destruction, Sarah Mitchell was still the smartest person in the room. The evidence was overwhelming. Sarah's DNA at both crime scenes. The murder weapon with her fingerprints. Her own confession to her law firm partner, recorded on his voicemail. Security footage showing her car at Jasmine's house, then returning home. Text messages she'd sent Jasmine setting up the meeting. But the why haunted everyone who touched the case. Sarah had everything. A partnership at a premier firm, wealth, status, a new marriage. Why throw it all away? Why not divorce David, cut off Jasmine, move on with the life she'd worked so hard to build? The answer, as Detective Cooper would tell reporters, was simpler and more terrible than anyone wanted to acknowledge. Some people, he said, would rather burn down their entire world than admit they were wrong about the people they loved. The media frenzy was immediate and brutal. Atlanta's most successful black female attorney murders husband and best friend became national news. The story had everything. Wealth, betrayal, black excellence turned tragedy. The fall of a woman who'd overcome impossible odds only to self-destruct spectacularly. Social media split predictably. Some saw Sarah as a victim pushed beyond breaking by ultimate betrayal. Others viewed her as a cold-blooded killer who'd used her legal knowledge to plan and execute a double homicide. The truth, as always, was more complicated than either narrative allowed. Gloria Mitchell gave one interview from her Chicago apartment, still cleaning offices at 67 years old. "My daughter spent her whole life trying to be perfect," she told the reporter, tears streaming down her face. She thought if she was smart enough, successful enough, good enough, nothing bad could ever happen to her. She was wrong, and now 2 people are dead and my baby's life is over. There are no winners here, just broken people and broken promises. The bail hearing was standing room only, every major news outlet present. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh argued that Sarah was a flight risk with resources and international connections through her firm. The defense, led by legendary attorney Marcus Webb, countered that Sarah had called her own law firm to turn herself in, not the actions of someone planning to flee. Judge Howard Chin denied bail entirely. The defendant is charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder. The evidence of planning and calculation is overwhelming. She presents a danger to society, and bail is denied. Sarah was remanded to Fulton County Jail to await trial. The woman who'd spent 12 years building an empire was now inmate number 284-7392, wearing orange scrubs and sleeping on a cot in a cell that smelled like disinfectant and despair. The psychological evaluation became the centerpiece of the defense strategy. Dr. Michael Torres spent 60 hours with Sarah, uncovering a pattern of childhood trauma, perfectionism as survival mechanism, and an identity built entirely on achievement and control. When Sarah discovered the affair, Dr. Torres would later testify, it wasn't just betrayal. It was complete ego death. Everything she'd built her sense of self on, her judgment, her ability to read people, her choice of partner and best friend, was revealed as catastrophically false. For someone whose entire self-worth was predicated on being the smartest person in the room, on overcoming impossible odds through sheer excellence, this level of wrongness about the 2 most important people in her life triggered a complete psychological break. But the prosecution had their own expert. Dr. Patricia Romano testified that Sarah's actions showed clear premeditation. She selected a weapon. She set up a meeting under false pretenses. She showered and changed clothes after the first murder before committing the second. These aren't the actions of someone in a dissociative state. These are the actions of someone executing a plan. The trial began November 18, 2024. Every major network carried it live. The woman who'd made partner by age 32 now sat at the defense table facing 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances that made her eligible for life without parole. Prosecutor Walsh's opening statement was devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant is a brilliant attorney who spent 12 years mastering the law. She knows exactly what murder looks like. She knows what evidence looks like. She used that knowledge to commit 2 calculated homicides. The timeline shows clear thinking. The weapon selection shows planning. The confession to her law partner shows she knew exactly what she'd done and was already preparing her defense. She presented the forensic evidence methodically. The blood spatter patterns showing Sarah's position during the attacks. The defensive wounds on Sarah's arms that were inconsistent with her claims of psychological breakdown. The time gap between murders showing opportunity for reflection and choice. David's mother took the stand, her grief turning the courtroom silent. My son was unfaithful. I'm not defending that, but there are divorce lawyers for that. There are therapists. There are 1,000 ways to handle a cheating spouse that don't involve stabbing them to death in your bedroom. Sarah Mitchell didn't just kill my son. She killed any chance of redemption, forgiveness, or healing. She chose violence over every other option. Jasmine's parents were even more devastating. They described Sarah as a daughter, a trusted friend who'd been part of their family for 14 years. She was at our Thanksgiving table, Jasmine's father said, his voice breaking. She was in our family photos, and she murdered our child because she couldn't handle being lied to. What kind of person does that? But Marcus Webb's defense was powerful in its honesty. He didn't deny what Sarah did. He explained the unbearable weight of perfection, the cost of building an identity on never being wrong. Sarah Mitchell spent 32 years being extraordinary, Webb told the jury. She escaped poverty that crushes most people. She overcame racism in spaces that were never meant to include her. She made partner at one of Atlanta's most prestigious firms through pure excellence. And she did all of that by never, ever being wrong. By being smarter, better, more prepared than everyone around her. He described the discovery of the affair. Imagine spending 14 years trusting someone as your sister. Imagine marrying someone you believe saw your worth. Then imagine discovering it was all a lie. For 11 months, while Sarah was working 80-hour weeks, while she was planning a wedding, while she was building what she thought was a future, the two people she loved most were betraying her. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt. For someone like Sarah, it destroys the foundation of reality itself. Dr. Torres's testimony supported this narrative. He described acute dissociative disorder triggered by what he called identity annihilation. Sarah's entire sense of self was built on being exceptional, on being right about important things. When she discovered she'd been catastrophically wrong about her husband and best friend, her psyche couldn't process it. The woman who committed these murders wasn't really Sarah Mitchell. It was someone operating on pure trauma response. The prosecution's rebuttal was clinical. Dr. Torres would have you believe that smart people get a pass for murder when their feelings are hurt. That's not how the law works. Sarah Mitchell made choices. She chose the weapon. She chose to drive to Jasmine's house. She chose to kill her, then go home and kill her husband. Those are conscious decisions, not trauma responses. Then Sarah testified against Webb's advice. She took the stand for 8 hours over 3 days. Her testimony was raw, unflinching, and devastatingly self-aware. I don't expect you to understand, she told the jury. I barely understand it myself. I spent my entire life proving I was good enough, smart enough, worthy of everything I'd achieved. And then I found out the person I married and the person I loved like a sister thought I was disposable. They looked at everything I'd overcome, everything I'd built, and decided it meant nothing compared to what they wanted. She described the murders with clinical precision that made several jurors visibly uncomfortable. I remember stabbing Jasmine. I remember her eyes. I remember thinking this is my best friend dying and not being able to stop. With David, it was different, colder, like I was watching someone else do it. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was destroying my life. But the person making those decisions wasn't the person I'd spent 32 years becoming. Walsh's cross-examination was brutal. You're a brilliant attorney, Ms. Mitchell. You know exactly what to say to make this jury feel sympathy for you. But the evidence doesn't lie. You planned these murders. You executed them. You showed no mercy to people who loved you, regardless of their betrayal. You expect this jury to believe that someone as smart as you, someone who spent their career understanding human nature and the law, just snapped and committed perfect murders. Sarah's answer would haunt the courtroom. I don't expect you to believe anything. I'm telling you what happened. I was the smartest person I knew, and I made the stupidest, most evil choice possible. Intelligence doesn't make you immune to destruction. It just means you destroy more thoroughly when you finally break. The jury deliberated for 7 days, the longest in Fulton County history for a murder trial. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty of first-degree murder for Jasmine Brooks. Guilty of first-degree murder for David Harrison. Special circumstances of multiple victims, lying in wait, and exceptional cruelty. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. The victims' families gave impact statements that left everyone in tears. David's mother simply said, "I hope you live long enough to understand what real loss feels like. To know that all your intelligence, all your success, all your perfection meant nothing when you chose to become a murderer." Judge Chen sentenced Sarah to life without possibility of parole. "You had every advantage," he said. "You overcame obstacles that would have crushed most people. You achieved excellence in a field that actively works against women of color. And you threw it all away because your pride couldn't survive being betrayed. That's not justice. That's tragedy. But this court deals in justice. And justice demands you spend the rest of your life in prison for taking 2 lives in cold blood." Sarah Mitchell, inmate number 2847392, currently resides at Pulaski State Prison in Hawkinsville, Georgia. She's 33 years old and will die in that prison if the appeals process doesn't somehow overturn her conviction. Her mother visits monthly, the 6-hour round trip becoming a ritual of maternal devotion that never wavers. "You're still my daughter," Gloria tells her through plexiglass. "You made terrible choices, but you're still mine." The appeal Marcus Webb filed was denied. The evidence was overwhelming, the jury instructions proper, the sentence legally sound. Sarah will serve her time with no shortcuts, no legal brilliance that can undo what she did. But prison has changed her in ways that surprise everyone who knew her before. She teaches GED classes, helping women who never had her advantages learn to read, to write, to believe they deserve better than the lives that led them here. She started a legal aid clinic using her knowledge to help fellow inmates file appeals, fight wrongful convictions, navigate systems designed to keep them powerless. "It's the first time in my life I've helped people without needing to win," she told a prison counselor during evaluation. "I spent 32 years trying to be perfect, trying to prove I deserved to exist in spaces that didn't want me. Now I'm just trying to be useful to people who understand what it means to lose everything." The case sparked nationwide debates about crimes of passion, about whether emotional trauma should mitigate murder charges, about the dangerous intersection of achievement and fragility. Law schools study Sarah's case as an example of how legal knowledge can be both weapon and shield. Psychology programs analyze her breakdown as textbook identity-based trauma. True crime podcasts dissect every detail with audiences split between sympathy and condemnation. 2 years into her sentence, Sarah received an unexpected letter from Jasmine's younger brother, Marcus. The letter began, "I hated you for killing my sister. Part of me still does. But I found something in her journals that I think you should know." The letter revealed that Jasmine had been planning to end the affair, that she'd written extensively about guilt, about knowing what she was doing was unforgivable, about loving Sarah too much to keep destroying her. She was going to confess. Marcus wrote, 2 days after you killed her, she was planning to tell you everything and beg your forgiveness. You didn't just kill my sister. You killed her chance to make it right. The revelation didn't excuse what Sarah did, but it complicated everything. Jasmine wasn't the monster Sarah had constructed. She was a flawed person who'd made terrible choices and was trying to find her way back to decency. Sarah had stolen that possibility. Sarah wrote back, "Thank you for telling me. It makes it worse, knowing she was trying to be better and I took that away. Your sister deserved the chance to become who she was trying to be. I'm sorry I destroyed that. I'm sorry for everything I took from your family." The correspondence continued sporadically. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement that grief and guilt can coexist in the same space. The Harrison family never responded to Sarah's letters. David's mother started a foundation for infidelity counseling, speaking at churches and community centers about how to handle betrayal without violence. "My son was a cheater," she'd say. "He hurt his wife. He deserved to lose his marriage. He didn't deserve to be stabbed to death in his own bedroom." After 5 years, Sarah's mother died of a heart attack while cleaning offices at the Board of Trade. She was 72 years old, still working to pay the mortgage on a small house, still visiting her daughter in prison every month until the day she collapsed. Sarah wasn't allowed to attend the funeral. She learned about her mother's death through a prison chaplain and spent 3 days in solitary confinement after attacking a guard in her grief. The woman who'd controlled everything, who'd built an entire identity on excellence and achievement, couldn't control the one thing that mattered. "I destroyed everything she sacrificed for," Sarah told her therapist afterward. "Every hour she worked, every dream she had for me, I turned it into bodies and blood and a life sentence. She died still believing I could be someone worth saving. I failed her worse than I failed anyone." The therapist's response was simple. "So become someone worth the sacrifice. You can't change what you did, but you can change what you do with the time you have left." Sarah Mitchell will never leave Pulaski State Prison. She'll never practice law again. She'll never have the career her mother died believing in. But she teaches. She mentors. She helps women who remind her of who she was: brilliant, damaged, convinced that intelligence can protect you from making catastrophic choices. "I was the smartest person I knew," she tells her students, "and I made the stupidest decision possible." Don't let anyone tell you that education or success makes you immune to destruction. It just means you have more to lose when you choose violence over healing. The case of Sarah Mitchell remains one of Atlanta's most controversial. The self-made attorney who had everything. The betrayed wife who chose murder over divorce. The woman who spent 32 years proving she deserved to exist and threw it all away in 2 hours of rage. There are no winners in this story. Only survivors trying to make sense of tragedy that should never have happened. David Harrison is dead. Jasmine Brooks is dead. Gloria Mitchell is dead. Sarah Mitchell is alive, but the woman she was died on August 3rd, 2024 alongside her victims. What remains is someone trying to answer an impossible question. How do you atone for the unforgivable? How do you build meaning from destruction you caused? Sarah doesn't have the answer yet, but she has the rest of her life to search for it. In a cell in Hawkinsville, teaching women who society forgot, trying to create something worth existing for in the ruins of everything she destroyed.